Welcome back to the Doug McConey channel. I am with Lindsey Bristow, fellow international tax partner and recent inductee to the University of Illinois Hall of Fame. Cue the intro. All right, Lindsey, first things first. I have learned a lot about you since working with you over the course of the last 15 months. I knew that you were a tennis player. What I did not realize is that in 1993, you were the Big Ten Women's Tennis Player of the Year, first University of Illinois women's tennis player to win All-American honors, and now the first University of Illinois women's inductee to the Hall of Fame. Tell me about that experience. You went to the University of Illinois a couple weeks back, and what was the induction ceremony like?
Yeah, the ceremony was so much fun. So I was one of 16 people being inducted into the University of Illinois Hall of Athletics, and so it's the third year that they've done this. It was actually the last of the Big Ten schools to have a Hall of Fame.
Oh, really?
For the athletics department, and so it was something that was started a couple of years ago with Josh Whitman coming on and being the AD. So to be part of the third class obviously was a big honor, and being the first women's tennis player, and I mean it was just super fun because we met all of the other inductees and you really kind of got to know them, right? And then you got to relive the glory days. So just even actually going back and kind of reading through the bio that they'd written for me, I was like, oh yeah, that was me. I did that. It seems like a long time ago, but you know, it was super fun.
I'll include that link below. Now tell me a little bit about that journey, because I know you came from the UK, you obviously played competitive tennis growing up, and then you did not start your university career at the University of Illinois. So tell me a little bit about how did you end up ultimately getting to the University of Illinois?
Yeah, that's right. So of course, like back in the day, 25 plus years ago, right, I was writing letters by hand saying, hey, this is my junior ranking, I've played on the British team, you know, this is what I've sort of done, right? And I just wrote a bunch of letters to D1 schools. And I didn't really know that much about the American college system, but I had been told, you know, there were older players than me that I had grown up with in the UK who had gone off to American universities, and so I got told, if you can get yourself to a D1 school, you'll be in a pretty good place. So I wrote a bunch of letters. Early on in the recruiting process, I got offered a full scholarship to go to Idaho State University in Pocatello, Idaho, D1 school, Big Sky Conference, and so that's what I signed up for. So I'd never been to the States, actually. I was 18 years old. I got on a plane and I flew from London to Dallas, Dallas to Salt Lake City to Idaho Falls, arrived in the middle of the night, got picked up, driven to Pocatello, Idaho, and there I was in America, right?
Wow.
And so I spent a year there in Pocatello, Idaho, and actually it was a great introduction to the States, right? Smaller campus, there was quite a few international players on the team. But once I decided that I was going to stay in the States, because originally I thought I'll just come for a year to the States and go back and do university in England, like the gap year. But once I decided I actually kind of liked this, I knew that I needed to get to a university that would probably challenge me a little bit more, both from a tennis and academic perspective. And so I had to arrange for a release from the athletic department, contact some schools, and luckily Illinois, they'd offered their scholarships, but they had somebody back out. And so the coach flew out really late in the semester. I mean, my season was finished for that year. She flew out, she saw me play, and she said, I got a scholarship that just opened up, and, you know, come to Champaign. So I went to Champaign for a couple of weeks before the start of my sophomore year, and transferred there.
Okay, so one full year in Idaho and then moved to Illinois.
Yeah.
And you didn't have to sit out, there was none of that, you were able to...
At that time, you could transfer from outside of the Big Ten into the Big Ten.
I see.
And not redshirt. That rule subsequently changed, but no, I got to transfer in, and so then I played for 3 years at Illinois. So.
And did you know you wanted to study accounting at that point, or when did you kind of determine what that major was going to be?
Yeah, so I started off as a math major when I
Okay.
was at Idaho State, and third semester calculus my freshman year was enough to tell
Right.
me that math major was not for me.
Okay.
So I did have a good idea that when I transferred to Illinois, I wanted to get into the College of Business, but you cannot transfer in until you're a junior. You have to have certain grades. And so my sophomore year, I think I maybe hung out in the liberal arts college, and then I transferred in as a junior to business. And at Illinois, if you're going to be in business, then accounting is the place to be, right? It's their top
Very
ranked
reputable
program.
Yep.
I think the rankings just came out recently, and they're still ranked number 2 in the nation for accounting, or they were this year. And so, you know, there is a heavy emphasis if you can get into the program to do accounting. And so that's where I went.
So as you know from working with me and working together for as many years, I'm obviously a huge baseball fan.
Yep.
Recently did the fantasy camp, and so, you know, I kind of ran out of talent in baseball at about my junior year in high school. So college, just from an athletic ability perspective, like I just had to accept, as much as I loved the game, that I was kind of done and I had to
Yep.
focus on academics. You obviously made it significantly further than me. But one of the things that I've done in a number of the vlogs is I talk about the lessons in best baseball or lessons in leadership. And I
Yep.
really think that doing competitive sports for young people, you know, and taking that really as far as you can go, you can learn a lot about yourself. You learn about winning. You
right.
learn about how to lose. Tennis is obviously a much more individualized sport than baseball, but baseball still has a lot of individual accountability. What lessons did you learn as a competitive tennis player and playing at that level that you feel like has helped shape you as a business person and leader that you are today in our practice?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting actually, because I had the opportunity last year to go back and speak at the student athlete banquet, the awards banquet at the University of Illinois. And then this year going back and speaking, all of the inductees had to do a speech. At the induction ceremony. And so it did really make me think of that exact question, right? Like, what did athletics teach me? And as I reflected back as well too, I really thought to myself, gosh, I did not appreciate when I came to the States how competitive it was to be a D1 athlete, right?
Wow, yeah.
You know, like how many kids play a high school sport, but how many actually get to then go play at D1? And then also, I mean, I didn't play my sport professionally, but sitting there, you know, with the inductees, a lot of them went to play their sport professionally. So I made my speech about, well, you know, what did it teach me, right? And as you mentioned, tennis really is more of an individual sport, but the way that they score it in college, it's very much a team sport.
I see.
And you're also, every day you're practicing with your team, right? And so I think that ability to understand how you can succeed, but how to be part of a team and how to bring out the best in others, and really the bringing out the best in others is what can give you as much reward as also the individual success. I think that was a huge part of my tennis career at U of I, and something that I have tried to bring into how I operate in the workplace.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think it requires, particularly playing at that level, is ambition and the just ability to be able to compete and to be able to, you know, have that killer instinct. I hate to use that kind of analogy, but, you know, you gotta...
You have to have a little bit of competitive spirit, that's for sure. But also with tennis, it's interesting, right? Like, you don't win every point in a game, right? So you're losing a lot of points, even if you're winning games. And sometimes the winning margin, I mean, you can win matches and actually have lost more points than you've won in the whole match. So it's the ability to play the right shot at the right time, make the right move in the right circumstances. And so it's a very tactical game, and I think there's often a lot of tactical elements in business as well too. So it's interesting how some of that from the game translates. And then, I mean, you know how it is, we can't win every single proposal, right? You can't win every match either. So you have to learn how to adapt, how to bounce back from losses, how to really employ those tactics maybe in a different way the next time you meet the same player.
So one of the things that you've been a big advocate is the women in our practice. And when we've done our national conference, you hosted women's breakfasts and various leadership meetings and gatherings for some of our women partners. I think sometimes that there's a perception with ambitious women that we sometimes hear, and this is written a lot about. And, can you comment on that? And because I feel like that you are ambitious, and I mean that as a compliment, right? And I feel like that people, male or female, should embrace that. And frankly, it's something that I know that as we're looking to fill our pipeline of future partners and talent, that we're looking for ambitious people. And so, how do you reflect on that, and what advice would you have for the women that watch the Doug McConey channel about being successful and ambitious and embracing that inner competitiveness to be a better professional?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting question. No one wants to get to where they are, right, or to be given opportunities just because of a certain gender, right? So you don't want to be, you want to earn those opportunities. But at the same time, you need to be encouraged and pushed along as well too, right? Sure. And so I think I have grown more comfortable with this over time, and I think also a lot of it has come from coaching others, because often it's a lot easier to look at someone else's situation and say, well, it's obvious you've got the talent, or it's obvious that you should do this, that, or the other, or why don't you try this or that, right? And so what I have tried to do is to then, employ that in myself. Okay, if I was in that person's situation, what do I think I would do, right? And then try and take those actions yourself. Of course it's totally okay to have goals and have ambitions, and I think it's also okay to say, you know what, I don't know if I know exactly what I want to do in the next 3 years or the next 5 years. I've actually found that quite difficult to answer myself as a question over the years. But I think constantly evaluating, what are you doing? Where are you spending your time? Are you feeling rewarded for where you spend that time? What do you see others doing around you? What opportunities have they had? What steps have they taken? Does that seem interesting to you? That natural curiosity, asking others, and not being afraid to ask for help, the way that you would offer help to others. I think all of those things propel you forward. And, that translates to maybe having an openness to try things. Maybe that translates to having ambitions to reach the next step.
Sure.
And I think that's great for you to embrace and try and move forward.
And I think that the way you frame that, some people early in their career, or even if you're a college student trying to figure out what you want to major in, and then you figure out, okay, well, this is what I think that I want to do. But over the course of a career, and I talk a lot about a career as a journey, just because once you decide that you want to be an accountant, then, okay, well, then what do I want to do with that? And then even after we make partner, it's like, okay, well, what do I want to do next? I think that it's really important for everybody to continually look forward and think about, well, what are those next goals? What are those things that we want to do? And sometimes it's putting the brakes on, and sometimes it's putting the accelerator on. And then you're a mom of 3 kids. One is now at the University of Illinois, which is going to be very exciting. And so I know that there were points in your career where you've put the brakes on, and then as the kids gotten older, being able to spend more time because you're on a part-time schedule. And I think we've actually talked about that on prior vlogs.
Yeah, and it wasn't that, at those points in time, it wasn't that I opted out. I didn't make some grandiose announcement like, hey, put the brakes on, right? I just recognized that there were I think there's different points in your career where you can push harder than at other points. And maybe there's different points in your career that you make slightly different decisions, right? Maybe you can't attend every extracurricular activity, right? It's okay to say no. You cannot have the fear of missing out, right? No FOMO allowed. You have to just embrace what you can do, and you have to have confidence that what you can do, it is enough. And that can be hard at times as well too. But yes, I've done different things over the years. For example, I've worked a 90% schedule on 4 days. I typically work Fridays at home, even to this day, even though I'm working a full schedule. And so, there's different tactics that you can employ, but I don't fret at home thinking, goodness, what's going on a Friday in the office that I'm missing out on. The rare occasion I'm there, I realize that no one else is in the office on a Friday either, right? Like, I'm not missing out. But, I think you can gain that confidence over time, and be confident in what you can do and not worry about what you can't do.
So this is a perfect segue and a plug that I wanted to make for a recent podcast. I'm a podcaster on a cross-border tax talks, my wonky international tax nerding out podcast. But you have recently been the sponsor of a new podcast working with several of our women partners and colleagues within ITS called How We Do It, which you can find anywhere you find your podcast. I'll include a link to that below. But what was the genesis of that, and maybe just tell the viewers kind of what that is and kind of what inspired that?
Yeah, and you mentioned some of the activities around promoting females earlier as well too. So I guess I recognized coming into this ops role, and when we started this journey together, Doug, about 15 months ago, I recognized that I was growing my network across the US and knowing all of the international tax partners that we have. And while I was doing that, I realized that many of our female ITS partners didn't actually know each other. And so that's why I wanted to create a forum where the ITS female partners could learn about where each other person was on their journey, the opportunities that they had, how could they help each other, really just form a networking group among the partners. And it was a couple of the other partners that came up with the idea for this podcast. And I think what is great about the podcast is the way that it's structured is that one of our female directors in the PCLDE process, which is our partner pipeline process, one of the directors interviews one of the partners. And so that way we can not only get the exposure for the partner, but we can get the exposure for the director as well too, create that bond between the two of them and enhance both networks at the same time. And so that's really the idea of the podcast, is to grow the network, the exposure, the branding of both our female directors that are in our partner pipeline process, as well as the ITS partner that's themselves being interviewed.
And the thing that I've really enjoyed about listening to it is the stories that everybody has to tell. Everybody has such an interesting story, right? Some more interesting than others. Not all of us are Hall of Famers, but it's fascinating to hear the journey that the different our women colleagues are going through. So check that out, How We Do It. I'll include a link below. So Lindsey Bristow, again, congratulations, Hall of Famer. I'm so proud to be partners with a Hall of Fame tennis athlete, All-American, Big Ten Player of the Year, only a few years ago.
Maybe more than a few.
So Lindsey, thanks again for being on the Doug McHoney channel, and stay tuned for the next edition of the Doug McHoney channel. Thanks for tuning in.